Stop. Look around you. Do you ever feel like you're playing a game but the rules were written by someone else? Like there's an invisible, ancient force dictating your limitations, your fears, even your greatest failures? It's not just in your head. The truth is, a spiritual and historical secret has been strategically erased from mainstream understanding, and it holds the master key to why you struggle to reach your full, divine potential. Here is the undeniable spiritual law. What you refuse to acknowledge controls you. For centuries, the forces that govern this realm, the forces that impact your blessing, your lineage, and your very DNA, have been masked. But what if I told you that the very reason for the chaos you see in the world, the destructive patterns in your family line, and the unexplained giant problems in your life are all echoes of a suppressed truth, a truth chronicled in a forbidden book? The truth of the Nephilim. In the next few minutes, we're not just going to talk about ancient myths. We are going to expose the archaic spiritual blueprint behind modern suffering. We will pull back the veil on the most censored passages of the Book of Enoch, passages that describe beings so powerful, their presence still ripples through our consciousness today. Your reward for staying until the end? The knowledge to dismantle the giant limitations in your own life by understanding their genesis. The gatekeepers don't want you to know this. Ask yourself this. If the Bible mentions giants and an entire book was written to explain their origin and impact, why was that book excluded, and what were they so terrified you'd find inside? Why does the constant fear of the other persist? Stick with me because what the Book of Enoch reveals about the Nephilim is a shock that will permanently shift your spiritual perspective. Before we dive into this mind-blowing lineage, I want you on this journey with me. This is truth that will challenge everything you've been taught. Hit that like button if you are ready to face a hidden history, and subscribe now so you don't miss the spiritual keys we unlock every week. The Book of Enoch introduces us to the Watchers, a group of 200 high-ranking angels who served in God's presence. Their rebellion wasn't just against authority, it was a cosmic lust for earthly power. They grew prideful. What spiritual contract did they break, and why did they target human women specifically, instead of any other creation? The answer lies in the spiritual power inherent in the human lineage they sought to corrupt. Enoch describes the Watchers descending on Mount Hermon and taking human wives. The resulting offspring were the Nephilim, translated as the Fallen Ones. This is not just a myth of tall people. This is the truth of a destructive hybrid. They were impossibly large, monstrous beings, a spiritual abomination that polluted the earth's original divine design. Was this an attempt to corrupt the human spiritual DNA and prevent the fulfillment of the divine promise? Prevent a messianic line from ever being born? This act was a preemptive strike by the forces of darkness. The Nephilim weren't the only problem. The Watchers, according to Enoch, also brought down forbidden knowledge. Azazel taught the art of warfare and the creation of deadly weapons. Semjaza taught sorcery and root-cutting, the source of black magic. Others taught the use of cosmetics, metallurgy, and astrology, skills that elevated humans but simultaneously corrupted their spirituality. Why are these same arts, driven by vanity, manipulation, and destruction, the source of many of our modern problems and spiritual traps? It's because their root is a demonic teaching. Let's make this personal. Why do you feel so exhausted, so drained, so perpetually in debt? The Book of Enoch describes the Nephilim as having an insatiable hunger, consuming human resources, animals, and eventually turning on humanity itself. This is the spiritual principle. The spirit of consumption still operates today. It's the energy that drives uncontrolled appetite, addiction, and the constant feeling that your cup is never full. This ancient, gigantic hunger is draining your potential and your wealth, spiritually and literally. Their violence wasn't accidental. It was intrinsic to their corrupted nature. They were beings of flesh and spirit, but without the divine soul that anchors morality. They ravaged the earth and shed blood relentlessly. God saw this bloodshed and decreed the flood, not just to wash away humanity, but to specifically wipe out this Nephilim corruption. If their primary characteristic was insatiable hunger, is this the ancient source of all addictive behaviors that plague us today? The addiction to power, to pleasure, to things that consume rather than fulfill? Amidst the corruption, Enoch, the great patriarch, walked with God. He delivered God's message to the watchers, detailing their judgment. He was the one voice of purity and righteousness in a world defined by monstrous flesh. What spiritual integrity did Enoch possess that allowed him to walk into the face of rebellious angelic power and deliver a decree of judgment? His message was a warning to us, that even the highest powers are accountable. God commanded the binding of the watchers in the deep abyss, in a place of terrible fire and darkness called Tartarus. This judgment was definitive. This imprisonment is why their physical presence vanished. But here's the crucial question. What happens when an ancient, powerful spirit is imprisoned but not annihilated? Does its influence simply vanish? No. It lingers like a spiritual poison ready to be released again. Their influence shifts from physical tyranny to spiritual manipulation. If your spirit is resonating with this ancient truth, it means you're being awakened. Don't let this knowledge fade. Take 5 seconds now to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your spiritual security depends on it. We've only scratched the surface of the Book of Enoch's terrifying revelations. The gatekeepers want you to believe the flood solved the problem completely. But the scripture states clearly, there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. We encounter the Rephaim, the Anakim, and the terrifying Emim, giants that appeared after Noah's ark landed. How did they return? Was it residual seed or a second incursion? The Book of Enoch suggests the spiritual template for hybrid life remained active, ready to manifest again through corrupted human lines. This is the point they don't want explained, because it proves the spiritual war is never truly over. Think about Goliath. He wasn't just a big man. He was described with armor and stature that defied nature. He was an echo of the original Nephilim line, a physical manifestation of ancient evil designed to terrify and enslave God's people. David's victory wasn't just military, it was a spiritual declaration that no giant, no matter how big, can withstand a pure heart backed by divine authority. Ponder, Goliath is the Goliath in your life. The mountain of debt, the chronic illness, the relationship pattern that constantly defeats you. What ancient spirit of fear or oppression is its root? Here is a profound and terrifying truth from Enoch. The Nephilim were hybrids without a proper spiritual destination. When they died, their massive volatile spirits were trapped on earth. The Book of Enoch specifically states that the spirits of the deceased Nephilim became the earthbound evil spirits we now call demons. This is why some things happen. They are the restless, destructive, flesh-hating remnants of the original sin, seeking to inhabit and manipulate human beings. They are the giants who no longer have a body but seek yours. This explains a crucial point. Why do you feel a spiritual resistance to your purpose, a heavy blanket of lethargy that stops your calling? Because the Nephilim spirits were left to wreak havoc on the earth. They target your human destiny, your health, your peace, your relationships, because they hate the body and the soul they once tried to corrupt and destroy. They create confusion to prevent you from discovering the truth of your divine heritage. The Watcher's landing site was Mount Hermon. The Bible describes the regions around it, Bashan, the kingdom of Og, as gateways and spiritual strongholds. The fact that ancient cultures built their highest places of worship and sacrifice on these same mountains hints at a deeper, continued spiritual significance. Ancient geographic locations hold spiritual keys. The enemy attempts to claim physical space to exercise spiritual control. The original sin of the Watchers was a war on the human gene pool, an attempt to contaminate the spiritual inheritance. Ponder, why is generational blessing or cursing so potent in your life? This war started over the purity of the human bloodline. The enemy still targets your spiritual inheritance by sowing patterns of addiction, lust, and violence that echo the Nephilim's own corruption. Understanding the origin allows you to break the pattern. This is a global truth. Connect the Nephilim to the Greek Titans, the Sumerian Anunnaki, and the Norse frost giants. Almost all ancient cultures have a parallel myth of divine rebellion and giant, monstrous offspring that warred against humanity. This uniformity across cultures separated by oceans and time suggests this wasn't just a localized myth. It was a worldwide, primal spiritual catastrophe that the mainstream narrative has successfully rebranded as harmless folklore. The sheer terror of facing something larger than yourself, a force that seems unbeatable, is a psychological echo of the ancient conflict. The Nephilim instilled a primal fear in humanity, that we are small, insignificant, and powerless against gigantic odds. This psychological chord is what the enemy plays on constantly. This fear stops your faith and prevents you from fighting the giants in your modern life. I am about to reveal the final, terrifying section of the Book of Enoch, the one about the final judgment. You must hear this. But first, prove you're committed to this truth. Share this video with one person who needs to be awakened, and let me know your biggest question about the Nephilim in the comments below. Your engagement fuels this mission for truth. Enoch's writings don't end with the flood. They contain a chilling prophecy. The Book of Enoch speaks of the Watcher's final, temporary release, a time of ultimate testing when the earth will once again be filled with corruption and the violent spirits will be fully unleashed. The biblical warning that the end will be as the days of Noah is a direct reference to the return of the conditions that allowed for the Nephilim's existence. Why is deception so rampant in our media, our schools, and our governments? The Watcher's first sin was transgression, crossing the sacred boundaries established by God. The spirit of transgression drives the modern agenda to blur all moral, biological, and gender lines. It seeks to confuse and corrupt humanity's identity so completely that we become easy prey for the spiritual giants. They seek to recreate the conditions of Noah's time without physical giants, but through spiritual chaos. So, how do you fight a spiritual giant? You cannot fight a spirit with flesh. The antidote to the Nephilim legacy is knowledge, righteousness, and the Word of God. Understanding the enemy's blueprint, knowing why the chaos exists, is the first, most critical step to freedom. You have been given the secret. The Nephilim were giants, but they were defeated by a divine flood and a decree. You have access to that same decree through your faith. The ancient giants are spiritual echoes that attempt to keep you small. But you are a descendant of the human line that survived the corruption. You have the spiritual DNA of faith within you. Now that you know the hidden history, will you continue to be controlled by ancient fear, or will you stand in the power of your divine design and declare that no giant, no matter its origin, can hold you back? The truth is now an undeniable sword in your hand. Use it. The secret is out. You have the knowledge. Don't let the giants in your life win. If this spiritual journey empowered you and resonated with your soul, make sure you're part of this community of truth seekers. Subscribe right now. And for a deeper dive into the forbidden texts, click on the video on your screen now to discover which other ancient book was almost censored and what it reveals about the forces working against your destiny.